Hey, all right, we're back. Hope you enjoyed that great session by Mads Christensen. And we're here, we're going to talk about WinJS. Huge news. I think it was day one, maybe it was day two. WinJS is now fully open source, cross-platform, cross-browser. Chris Anderson, thanks for coming back. Why don't you tell people what you do in this capacity?
Well, I'm a bad middle manager who works with these guys, and these guys do brilliant work. So Josh is the dev lead who runs the WinJS team, and hit the button that said make it go live on GitHub.
Awesome.
And Paul's the PM lead who runs all of the WinJS team as well.
Awesome. So we do this for you guys out there. Please ask WinJS questions, or if you want to throw some XAML in, maybe we'll do that, but we did a lot of that yesterday. So right off the bat, WinJS is now open source, that's nice.
Yeah.
And cross-platform. What do you mean it's cross-platform? I mean, it's WinJS with a lot of inroads into Windows-specific things. Talk to me.
Oh, so when we started WinJS back in Windows 8, and we started actually, the initial development for WinJS, it was actually happening in Chrome. Like we were, at the time, we were working on, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but now it's out of the bag.
Okay.
No, so we were developing in time because we were simultaneously developing the browser, the new IE features for Windows 8. And so it's always been a pure JavaScript library with very specific hooks. And what we did is, as we found bottlenecks, we added and changed standards, and we coded the latest standards. And so you see things like CSS grids, snap points, all in IE that we then have taken advantage of. So we've spent more time, I think, looking at how do we make the browser features run really great on other browsers than we have necessarily on the Windows specific parts.
Sure.
Yeah. There's a couple parts of WinJS where we light up when we're in the Windows runtime environment, but those things all can be used in other environments too, and it'll work great. Right now we're just beginning this process of open sourcing WinJS, and we're bringing it to the web. We hope people will come and join us on GitHub and watch us finish and help us finish. Right now we've already seen people tweeting, hey, it's pretty awesome that when you go use your try.build WinJS site, you actually have issues listed. Like, you've acknowledged that there's work to be done here, and here's a link to the GitHub issue. You can go and comment on it and talk about how you'd like us to solve that problem, and our team's going to be working on doing that.
Awesome. Now, speaking in terms of what's going on in GitHub and the fact that people are making pull requests, I heard there's some.
Yeah.
What's the excitement? What are some of the numbers?
Yes, some of the numbers I can share is, so GitHub has trending charts. So I don't know if you guys have ever used that. It's kind of like the Billboard, top 50 music list. So WinJS actually jumped to the #1 spot in the daily trending on GitHub this week after the announcement. Right now, we're on the monthly trending list. Last I checked a couple hours ago, we were spot number 9 this month of all JavaScript projects, where something like Angular was number 6 and jQuery is number 17, to give you context about the amount of activity and excitement that's going on around WinJS right now on GitHub. We've already had, I think, 6 or 7 pull requests. We've taken a couple. We've had more than 100 people have forked WinJS. That means they've taken made their own copy of it that they can start working on, making improvements to, that they can then choose to submit back if they want, or use for their own purposes. There's more than 1,400 people that started the library. More than 120 people are kind of watching it, and that means that every single issue that gets filed, every single pull request that gets made, they get an email notification. So these are people who are very interested in really closely watching the project
Or they really like email spam.
So there's definitely a lot of excitement, right away that we've seen with it. It's been really fun to see just articles people are writing and things people are trying out already. Just this morning, someone had posted an article on, I think it was readwrite.com, so a tech kind of blog website, where they made their first WinJS app on a Mac, by the way. And they posted all of how they did it and their screenshots of them using the Mac command line and so forth. And so for us, it's really exciting to see a lot of people who aren't always part of the usual Microsoft development community start to get engaged with and interested in Microsoft technologies.
That's awesome.
With things like this.
And JS, of course, being sort of this cross-platform by design.
Yeah.
So Gabriel wants to know, I see you guys embrace TypeScript. How should we as the community approach translation to TypeScript? Now, this, of course, is a WinJS panel, but you
got an opinion? Great. So it's interesting. WinJS itself doesn't leverage TypeScript today. There's on definitely typed.org, which is a community website that a bunch of folks have been working on that have been doing type annotations for libraries. There's a WinJS d.ts out on that, and so there's a way to use TypeScript and to target WinJS in a strong type fashion. And on our roadmap, we're planning on contributing and helping out with that. We're actually we were just having this discussion today about when we should start adopting TypeScript directly in WinJS. And I think we want to hear from the community as to when that's appropriate. Now that we're in the community space and on GitHub, we kind of want to have that discussion with the people who are participating in the community to see when we should or how much we should take it. I'm a huge fan of TypeScript. I love it, but we need to kind of judge the community sentiment on it.
I mean, WinJS is a rather large file with a lot of JavaScript in it, which is what TypeScript's aim is to help. Modularize, if you will, or objectize.
Yeah. And we've definitely been talking with the TypeScript team and talking about a couple of features that we'd like to see in the language that they now have time to add after it's at 1.0, and those features will really help us even get better and better. And right now, actually, we have a couple of very vocal proponents that work for me who really want us to do TypeScript now. One of them even went and created a branch. He's like, we should do this, and we're having the conversation about when is the right time and how far down we should go. And I think the question was about like, hey, we're in the community, how do you think about translation? Because we have this 4-year-old project that we've been working on with a bunch of devs for a long time. It is a lot of code because we have a lot of features. And how do we go and take those features and move them to TypeScript slowly and reliably without actually going and breaking them? Like, you can obviously do the first thing, which is rename your files. Great, now they're TypeScript, but how do you actually get value out of that?
Sure.
And so for us, we think the first step for getting value is going to be modules. As we modularize WinJS and turn it into smaller pieces that can be loaded, piecewise, we think TypeScript's going to really help us do that, and we're excited about that. And so we want to wait until we're ready to do that full step before we just go rename all the files.
Awesome. Yeah. So Andre wants to know, is it possible to use WinJS, iOS, or Android apps too?
I'll say a couple things about that. So if you go to our try.buildwinjs.com website, you can actually go try it right now on your iOS or Android device, and you can see in real time exactly how it works today. We showed a bunch of these in our sessions. My session on Wednesday, I showed it running on an iPad, actually in an app that was built using something called Apache Cordova. So you can start to see we're just launching this week and the project to the open source project to take it cross-platform. So we haven't done all the development work and stuff to make every feature work on iOS and Android and so forth yet. That's kind of going to be the project ahead, and that's part of what's on our roadmap to go add. But you can kind of see exactly right now what works and what doesn't on the website. You can see things that work in Chrome. For example, our flip view control is a great example of something that on Chrome you can use with touch or with mouse, and on Windows you can use with touch or mouse. And because IE happens to support these new snap point standards, merging standards that Josh was talking about, you can swipe to touch kind of in real time, whereas on Chrome it's more of a tap to touch thing because they don't have that standard support yet. But as that comes along, you can see how the things will be designed to work. I think it's a good control that gives you a picture about how things will be made to work across platforms.
Excellent. Now, just to ask this, it is open source, and by definition, that means the community could help implement this thing. You talk about our roadmap. When you're open source, doesn't the roadmap become community roadmap?
Well,
certainly. It's certainly the case. The community can. We want them to come help us. We're going to create what's called a user voice site next week where people can talk and have forums about new features they want. But at the end of the day, we are still building a particular product, and so we're going to have a roadmap and vision. We're going to try to achieve a goal. And we're going to try to be really transparent in what we're trying to achieve, both near term, where we'll be really concrete. Like right now, we're saying we're going to go cross-platform, we're going to modularize, we're going to minify. That's near-term kind of stuff. And then as we get further out, we're going to get a little more vague and be like, well, we think we're going to do some more stuff. Help us make it more concrete.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when people want to contribute, if people want to contribute features back to WinJS, we'd love to have that contribution. We would hope that those people, just like members of our team, would come and talk to us, and we'd work together to get the right thing that's working into the product, so it all works together seamlessly for people going forward. If you're fixing a bug, rock and roll, fix a bug, send us a pull request. We'll have a conversation as part of the code review, things like that.
Awesome.
But for features, we'd like to have a conversation with people. We want to treat you like a member of the team.
And it's every project, every open source project has a roadmap, and so it's by our roadmap I mean our community roadmap with WinJS.
Right on. So Brian wants to know, will the RDP control namespace work cross-plat now?
I'm not familiar with the RDP controlled namespace, but I will say in general, the WinRT APIs are all part of the Windows platform. And the WinJS solution for those is that we will either bridge to existing APIs on other platforms where appropriate, or make those be optional components, which will have a smart failover. So we're not announcing anything regarding WinRT libraries that would
in the case of the RDP library, we don't have anything in WinJS that deals in that space. We're mainly a UI component toolkit and a set of kind of structural stuff to build HTML apps.
Right on. Peter wants to know, do you think that now is fully possible to write responsive app on Windows Phone using WinJS that have nothing to envy to others written in C# XAML?
Envy's a hard emotion to squash. But at the end of the day, we believe that you can write awesome apps on Windows Phone in 8.1 today. And in fact, the canonical, new control that we went and built, the pivot control, we went and made a test app for ourselves just to prove that it was right and it had animations and everything else. And we wanted to really be able to show it around to people to help them understand how good of a release this was going to be. And so what we made was the test app look exactly like the Mail app on your phone. But it looks too close like the Mail app, because every once in a while I'd be running it, I'd show it to someone, and then I'd leave to walk to another meeting, and I'd be sitting there looking through my mail being like, this isn't my mail. Like, I was literally getting confused by this test app, and then I'm like, oh, I'm in that damn test app again, and I'd go to my mail. And so I think that for the class of apps that we have controls for, like there's some control differences today and things like that. And so in certain places you'll want to go write a XAML app or go use that. But I think you can build awesome apps on phone today.
So now, one of the things we announced on day one was the notion of universal app. And of course, HTML5 being first class and that citizen, therefore WinJS or some variant of a universal WinJS as well. So that's my question. WinJS in a universal app.
It's fully supported. Yes.
Yep. Rock and roll.
And in fact, we had a session this week showing using WinJS and WBase to write Xbox apps, and how we've extended features in there to allow you to do voice annotations on your controls, to have connect invocation on them, plug in with the controller, all of that stuff. So it's been plumbed through all of there.
Awesome. So we have a super long question from Jin.
It's a three-parter.
Three-parter. So let's go with the first parter. And Jin thinks he has some ideas of how we can gain more momentum for WinJS. Number one,
I love that he's contributing to our marketing plan.
You got it. So allow Chrome to be used for WinJS to develop store apps.
That's
done?
A fascinating idea.
Yeah?
Chrome to be used for
okay.
We'll see.
Reference apps to use reusability of WinJS code in iOS, Android hybrid web view app.
For sure. Things we're going to do.
Allow WinJS store apps to run on Windows Phone 8 apps without much code change. For that matter, Metro C# store apps would be wonderful.
And so I assume here he's talking about Windows Phone 8 as opposed to 8.1. So it's certainly the case that part of our cross-platform story will be that we'll run on Windows Phone 8. And we'll assume people will use something like Cordova solution in that scenario.
Cool. Dan wants to know, do you think that a name like WinJS will turn away the devs and just assume it's just for Windows? Should the name change? What's the new name?
I think we did try a few names, and we were thinking of something like, what was it, JReact Win Angular JS? And
we figured if you can string together 12 or 13 words, you can trademark it. So.
Yeah. So the next 12 words that come across the questions will become the new name.
Awesome.
No, the names are really tough, and we actually had a debate internally, and we watched, and we watched the Cordova versus PhoneGap thing of, they wanted to have a difference between the PhoneGap product and the Cordova library, and the community got very confused as to which meant what and what the difference was. And so we really had a discussion about should we come up with a more hip name of Water.js or Splug or something.
Someone told me it's just Noun.js, fill in the noun.
And so we should just call it actually Noun.js. Like that would be the...
And I mean, we think developers are pretty smart. We think they'll be able to see for themselves.
Yeah, they're pretty smart.
When they go to our website and try it out and see how it works across platforms and stuff. And so we decided to stick with this name. And if we find that, gosh, this is confusing people or something 6 months from now or something, we can revisit.
Yeah, I would actually say we are actually open to the conversation about changing the name. If we come back and everyone says, you should fix it, and this will be a great name. I don't think that there's
absolutely.
There's not a universal love, especially for the longer name.
Sure.
Nobody likes to call it Windows Library for JavaScript, Microsoft Edition versions 3.8 for Windows.
Paul
Azure.
Gasparino special.
Here's one. Here, WinJS.
WinJS.
That was on our list also.
That was on our list. We do believe that would not fit with one of the things of coming to the community somewhat humbly to learn about what the community's like. This is a learning process for us. Like, this is one of our, at least, there's groups in Microsoft that are pretty far along the open source spectrum. Definitely some of the ASP.NET groups and various places in Azure that have done a great job of engaging with this community already. But I will say that on the core Windows team and the core platform team, having this asset, which is part of our mainstream developer platform, and taking it open source, it is a learning exercise for us, both internally and how we deal with the community. Mm-hmm. And we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to mess things up, and we're going to try to do our best to learn and change and fix it as we go.
Hey, I mean, you had Win32, you had WinRT. I mean, it was a natural thing for you to do.
Yeah.
Frank wants to know, what are you most proud of in this release, and what are you excited to see people implement?
Paul?
I guess, to me, I'm actually very proud of how quickly we've turned around to even get this release out there. So if you just put things in perspective, we released the WinJS 2.0 just at the last build along with Windows 8.1. Then we've released WinJS 2.1 for phone now, just less than a year after that, and the open source version. And so, I don't know, personally I'm just excited about how quickly we've gone from kind of 1.0 to 2.0 to 2.1 to the open source release for the whole community, that's pretty fast, pace, kind of given where we come from at Microsoft. I think some of my personal favorite features that I really like, the list view control is near and dear to my heart. It's a problem that I've personally seen at Microsoft over the years. I worked on Windows Explorer for Windows 7. I was actually the PM lead on the UI of that. And data virtualization is a very, very, very hard problem. For years and years, people have tried to do a really good job with list view type controls that you can actually have very, very large sets of data and have a really responsive, great experience with it. And our list view control just is pretty outstanding in my opinion. Put there humbly, it's just really, it's a really great control.
Nice.
And so I'm very proud of that. I'm very excited to see people start to use that and the kinds of things they can do with it.
Nice. For the phone release, I think it's a pivot control. I love that thing.
Yeah.
And for the open source thing, I think it's our try.buildwinjs.com website. I think that's
pretty fun.
Amazing. You can just go up there, you can play with our samples, you can change them, you can do other things. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. So Wayne wants to know, besides adding open source pull requests for WinJS, what other ideas do you guys have for the future of WinJS?
Sure, I can speak a little to that. So I think as we look out further, we have a number of things that we know that we need to address for WinJS. One of the big things that we need to address for WinJS is we need to help people make apps, make it easier to make apps that span whole categories of devices and various kinds of places that you're aiming at. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff. We're not quite sure exactly what the components are there. We're kind of like prototyping and playing with stuff, and we're going to be iterating in the open on that about how we can make it easier to have componentized views and things like that would really allow you to build a phone app and an Xbox app and a tablet app and lean into the different UI that you'll have on those 3 different platforms because maybe you want different user experiences. So that's one thing. I'm sure there'll be cool new UI controls that we want to do, and then we're going to do some stuff around that. There'll be a number of things. One of the common requests we have from the community is to finally look into our navigation model and put something into the platform where today it's in the templates. We have requests around themability in our CSS files, all kinds of stuff like that.
Cool. And are you going to figure out how to simulate threads?
No.
Maybe use exceptions and simulate threads and stuff like that?
No.
All right.
No.
So, hey, what about Universal JS or JS Foundation? I like the fact that people are going to weave in name ideas
I love it.
Universal JS is humble.
Universal JS.
JS Foundation sounds like a company name.
We're giving out source code now.
Yeah,
I'm not
like
clear
those.
we can lead with JS. I don't think we own the trademark JavaScript.
Yeah.
But,
I like that.
Thanks for the suggestions.
Yeah.
Awesome. So is the WinJS architecture a 64-bit platform and open source friendly?
So I think that this might be a misunderstanding of what WinJS is. So I think a lot of people out there see WinJS as being the entire thing from, kind of soup to nuts of what it is to build an HTML app on Windows. And so really the thing about Windows is that we have this low-level platform called the WinRT that you can write components that plug in. You write them in C++, you can write them in C#. And then we have Trident, which is our HTML, CSS rendering engine. We have Chakra, which is our JavaScript engine. And those, correspond to most other browser vendors have one of those. And all other browser vendors have one of those. And then we have a small hosting layer on top that we internally call WWA host. And then on top of that is WinJS. And so the thing that's on top, WinJS, the thing that we're open sourcing today, the thing that we're bringing cross-platform, is both a set of utilities for building single-page apps, so it's things like fragments, things like data binding, things in that space, and then it's also a set of UI controls, things like the list view that Paul mentioned, things like the flip view, things like the ratings control that scrubs well with your finger with touch. We think that there's a lot of value in both of those things. Some of those things are thank you for laughing.
Sorry.
Some of those things, have value and have a lot of corollaries on the web today. That Spa Toolkit stuff I was talking about, AngularJS, Knockout, things like that are very similar in nature, and we think we have great implementations, but it's not like we're going to go say, hey, you should throw away Angular and use ours. Rock and roll if you love Angular, God be with you. And then we have our set of UI controls, and we think we bring a lot of actually unique differentiated value in the UI controls, and we think that they layer very nicely on top of whatever toolkit you're using today, or on top of the toolkits that we've built to help you build apps. So that's the thing we're actually building. So with regard to 64-bitness or everything else, it's just JavaScript, man, so, it is what it is.
Right on. So David wants to know, I would like to know if I'm going to be able to apply WinJS to my current MVC5 AngularJS and jQuery app.
Yes.
Yes. In some way, shape, or form.
And just to elaborate a little bit, we designed WinJS from the ground up to be interoperable with other libraries. And so it's a very componentized, layered system. And so as we, in fact, if you can check out the talks we had earlier this week on it, or if you go to GitHub, you can find the Angular WinJS and the Knockout WinJS adapters that have been written. So if you're writing an app with something like Angular, or if you're writing an app with something like Knockout to do your binding, you can very easily layer on and integrate WinJS for UI controls. You can very easily just take a flip view or a list view or a ratings control, or you can just use promises, or some part of the architecture of WinJS alongside with apps in a very natural way.
Awesome. I mean, one of the cool things about WinJS is your promises infrastructure. Because the whole async everywhere, all the time model of WinRT, very important for UI-based applications. You guys built a really robust promise-based system.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Josh actually is the guy who wrote all of the code for that.
Nice, Josh.
Well, so, one of the things someone tweeted yesterday, I think, was, why didn't you use Q? So there's a really great promises implementation out there called Q, which is kind of nowadays the reference implementation for promises. And so the thing to remember is that the WinJS project's been going on a long time. The WinJS project actually started back at the end of 2010, and when we went and put promises in as our solution, we knew that the WinRT was going to be highly async, and we needed some mechanism to compose the asynchrony. And I guess I should just tell the story. We were debating what mechanism we'd use to compose the asynchrony, and we were debating, and one day, I believe Anders pulled Chris aside and said, you would not want to choose a mechanism that would not let you build language features in the future, right? And so,
Nice.
And so we started talking about it, and I went over the weekend and started searching the web for what people were doing in this space. And at the time, what people were doing in this space, there were a bunch of things people were doing, but one of the things that seemed to be catching on was this thing called Promises A. And so I went and written implementation for us, and we revved it a few times. We stuck it in the engine, we stuck it into WinJS, and we've moved it forward since then. And actually, we used it as an opportunity later to actually have our ECMAScript committee member bring it to ECMAScript as part of the other guys that were standardizing promises. And so, I don't know if you know, but promises will be part of the ECMAScript 6 standard, and to some degree, we're influenced by our promises in doing that. Which is kind of cool.
That's
so in the
excellent.
future, my hope is that for base level features like that, and for base level features like our namespaces and classes, we can actually deprecate them and kind of get rid of them, because they're being replaced slowly by things like TypeScript and things like ECMAScript, so that we don't even need them anymore.
Awesome. So is WinJS powered by does WinJS power the Millennium Falcon?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right on, man. Right on. So Sam says, I'm a .NET web developer. Is there any way I can use open and common libraries such as Angular or jQuery instead of WinJS for interface and use C# for the back end?
Of course you can.
Of course.
You should go see John Hazen did a talk on the first day. You can go find the video. And he built a Windows HTML app using Sublime and used no WinJS anywhere in it.
Cool. And yeah, and that's one of the rich things about the Windows runtime architectures. You can interoperate different languages and choices, and so you can have modules that you write in C++ and in C#, and then you can use them with a HTML-based front end if you'd like. So there's a lot of power that the Windows runtime gives you to do that kind of interoperability.
Excellent. And another name alert,
Oh, there we go.
Internet.js.
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 That might be overreaching. Yeah.
Done.
It's
Universal.
Actually,
Can we
it's a
combine
series
these?
of tubes.
Universal.
It's a series of tubes.
Series of tubes.
I'm done. Internet.js. I'm done.
Internet.js.
I love it.
Or just
Beautiful.
IJS. We can be
IJS.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
a little I.
With a little, of
Would
course,
anyone
it has
else,
to be a little
would
I.
anyone else
Nice.
object to that?
Yeah. And
Do
a little,
it.
Does that copy anyone else's trade dress?
I think it'll be
Moving on.
okay.
Moving on.
Right on. So we have a few minutes left, so ask more questions. Until then, can we really quickly talk about, because we've never spent any time talking about sort of the morphology of WinJS, or I mean, it's just this one giant file with lots of incredible things in it that do many different things, UI, computation, whatever. Can we kind of talk really briefly about the chunks of it?
Yes, it's interesting because when we started WinJS, we actually knew we wanted it to be modularized. And so if you look at the source tree, you can actually see this where there's a bunch of directories that each have individual files in them. And so there's maybe 15 kind of modules in terms of how we thought about them at the time. And when we first gave those 15 files to everybody and they looked at it, they said, well, I want to go use all of it. And at this time, it wasn't clear that require or some of the module stuff was going to take off. And so having to add those files in the right order and having to manage that long list of files was really kind of a pain in the butt. And so we got the request to kind of consolidate it down to just a small number of files. And so we kind of defended our line and saying, well, hey, we want the base thing and then the UI thing, and so we'd at least like to have two. And so now we're at this place where we do have these two large files. But if you look at it, there's a pretty reasonable hierarchy of those modules where we have the base system that has our binding and the class and namespace work, some of the templating pieces as fairly low-level pieces. And then the UI controls, and those are fairly isolated from each other. The list view doesn't have any coupling to the flip view. The pivot is its own
Rating
distinct
control.
thing. The rating control, well, the rating control is really the heart of WinJS.
It's a standalone.
It is the power control of WinJS. No, and we have tried to keep those things be fairly separated so that you can really mix and match them. So like the list view actually has no coupling to data binding, for example. And so that's why it's very easy to swap out and say, hey, I want to use knockout. And there's no dependencies, there's no tight coupling with those things.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and if you do look at the GitHub repository, you'll see, while most people who kind of just consume WinJS just see those two big files, the UI.js and the base.js, in the GitHub repository, you'll actually see the full, source tree, the dozens of files that that make it up.
Absolutely. So, no more questions.js. Just kidding. Actually, I was thinking of a good one would be afn.js, another freaking name.
Yeah, there you go. AFN.js.
afn.js, man.
Treadwell may have problems with that.
Treadwell may have problems with that. But so it looks like we're winding down here. Thanks for all the great questions.
Thanks a lot.
We already kind of talked about what next, but let's kind of briefly talk about what's next. What are you working on next with WinJS?
The big thing we're working on next is getting to the cross-platform. So we have a series of bugs we're going to burn down. We're going to burn down bugs around, the list view and its current grid layout. We're going to burn down bugs around, like one of the bugs that we noticed today, and we're actually using telemetry from our try.build WinJS site to notice, is that an enormous number of people who are visiting that site are visiting on Macs and they're visiting on Windows 7. And we actually use a font symbol, a symbol font for a lot of our glyphs, like the flip views, little angle brackets. And that's on our issue list of something we need to resolve in order to get to the web, because that symbol font only exists on Windows 8 and beyond. And so we're working with our font guys to try to go figure out how we're going to solve that particular problem and try to solve it next week, just so that people who are visiting our website will be able to actually go and see it right now and kind of react to who's using it right now and get it there. And then we're going to just keep on working.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for coming on Channel 9 Live. Always great to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And great job on WinJS and
Thanks.
open source. Go ahead and make pull requests. Fork it.
Yeah,
Fork it.
yeah. Fork it.
Go for it.